flow, patient flow from home to the primary care physician. And then next, that will increase admission or hospital cases or decreasing hospital cases after having this more primary medicine group initiative is launched. What is your observation?
Hard to say. I think the aim of that transformation was to try to focus more on the patient on tertiary and quaternary care here. Because we, as you told earlier, we have to inverse the rate of the patient that uses the complex care instead of being treated by the first line services. So I think the reform about the GNF medicine group was done about, I guess, 10 years or maybe a little more. So of course it increases the access of the first line services and physician. But what's the impact of the hospital? It's really hard to say because we don't have more or less patient. We have the better patient, we have the patient we were supposed to be there for. Maybe, but it's a lot of, it's hard to establish a linear causality. So you have to consider all the other things Dr. Brunet mentioned about. There was the coordination of the other care. It's a kind of a guichet unique that they ask for the specialty consultation, and those things in globality helps to treat the patient at the right place. But the impact, what do you think about it?
Well, we have to remember that 3 years ago, the government decided that geographically the province would be separated. And if you live somewhere, you do business with this hospital. You're not supposed to go to any hospital. But this does not apply to Montreal because there's too much mixed up here. So if someone gets gets sick and goes to his family physician, then the family physician refers that to what we call the CRDS. This applies to 9 specialties right now, but the next specialties will go into effect in September, and the last one next year. What this implies that as a physician, as a family physician, I cannot send my patient anywhere. I have to send that to the CRDS. Well, the CRDS then decides where should I get this patient to get a specialist. And and they have the whole access to what are the available appointments in all these offices, and they have reserved places for them. And then what we found recently when we applied to these 9 specialties is that many patients were going to Montreal believing that in Montreal they would have better services or better care. But with applying of these 9 specialties, we found that many of those patients didn't come to Montreal anymore. They were served in their own areas, outside of Montreal, Laurentians, Montérégie, and elsewhere. And what we believe is that we will apply all the specialties to that services. Montreal will get relief from all the needs of applying services to work. And that's why the government decided to invest a little more on other hospitals in the areas. The problem is if we get rid of the emergency wards, then we will have an empty hospital. There's a risk for that. We cannot run an hospital only on 3rd and 4th level of care because we don't have that many people to run. But the other side of that is since you belong to a given hospital, if you come here to get a specialist care, 3rd or 4th level, when you don't need this hospital, then the patient is returned to its basic hospital. So that's why the time frame when they last here is very short. It might be very short on certain conditions. The best example of that is acute vascular cerebral accident. We are only one of the 4 centers in the province making thrombectomy. And these patients, they come from all over Montreal area and outside the Montreal area. But when they come there, they have their care, they're taken, they stay in the hospital for 24 hours, but after that, they have to go back to their own hospital. And that's how we, even with on a third or fourth level of care, we can get those patients rolling very fast. And this is going to be applied to other services as well. We do transplant. We do a lot of transplant. We do liver transplant, pulmonary transplant, renal transplant, pancreas transplant. And because of that, we need to be careful for those patients because they're not treated as well. So we need to base most of our energy toward those people. But this applies also to cancer patients. But even on that aspect, cancer patients are more and more treated in their own areas rather than in Montreal. Before that, our radio-oncology service was overbooked. Now they're underbooked because they built other radio-oncology centers in the northern part and the southern part of Montreal.
That's quite the encouraging anecdotal story about my question. So if it is really official statistics, it might be much better. However, the story you told us is quite good enough in some sense. So I would be very happy to know this story. So that the next year is for expanding beyond the 9 subspecialties, but currently it's within only.
But all the specialties will be involved in the next few months. And the next batch will be about, I think, 10 specialties will be in September. And the rest will be 2019 somewhere, I don't know where yet.
So in that story, can acknowledge that family medicine groups more access to care
Yeah.
is efficiently working for appropriate resource allocation and service
Yeah.
utilization. So
Yeah.
kind of coordination, even though there is no vivid coordinator, but still you can do very well in the intensive way without any visibility, but still you increase your efficiency by hospital level and then also primary care level together, even geographically, so that they choose their more open source in their proximity, not really the far away. Our mission is kind of people are hoped to get the perceived good quality from the top center in the top capital. However, not really. If primary care physicians are working very well with their patient, they can choose their own proximity-based, very convenient services with a high good charge.
Yeah.
So that's
A major aspect of that is family.
Yeah.
If you're in the hospital, and you're over there, but your family's over here,
Yeah.
that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And we do have a good example of that. And many people don't want to get far away or don't want to come here because they live 4 streets away from there, that's another hospital over there. So we don't really need to, as Yaran said, teach the population about that. They know about that. They know they might be very well treated somewhere. And there is still a believing that because the hospital is new, you have a lot of doctors, which is not true. We do have really big hospitals in Montreal, which have tertiary care as well, and very, very dependent on that. And we don't touch those tertiary care, like bone marrow transplant. That's done in the zone. We never touch that because they have the experts. How this came about was through history, through involvement of physicians with time. So with time, there were strong physicians, and they decided that they want to get involved. One example of that is l'Institut de Cardiologie de Montreal, Montreal Cardiology Institute, which is an institute, what they do only cardiology. And I'm not supposed to repeat that, but on a medical base, that's very wrong. You're not supposed to add, you're treating a patient, you're not treating a disease. And this hospital has a big problem. They have to send, every time there's something else that happens to those patients, they have to send them somewhere else. They're supposed to be a couple with in the Eastern hospital, but that doesn't work all the time. Then they have to phone everywhere, well, we have this patient, it's not really our problem, can you take it? That's very wrong. They, on the English side of Montreal, they have the same problem with the neurology department, Neurology Institute. Well, at any time that a patient was outdated or not part of a neurology problem, they had to send him over elsewhere. So this trend is that's very political. And that's very difficult to do otherwise. You have to realize also that based on the political aspect of this province, they know that in terms of general practitioners, Montreal is understaffed. We don't have enough family physicians in Montreal. And the government is not working that hard to replace them. The reason for that is the Montreal areas, they always vote for the same party. This line is always the same party, that line is always the same party. There's no need for our government to invest in those areas. Obviously, there is some pressure, there will be some pressure, but they will win their elections according to what's going on outside of Montreal. And that's why they do invest something, sometimes not very logically, on these hospitals or on these staffs or on the number of physicians that you get in their area, because they don't want to get the votes.
That's true. That's true. It's
And
never
I'm
said.
sure it's going the same way everywhere. Everywhere where you have democracy, that's probably the same thing anyway. So, but on the long run, it seems to level up sometimes. It's not as bad as it used to be. Because everybody knows that, well, you're doing that, but that's not okay to do that. And otherwise, we think that the way the whole medical system is evolving, it's going on the right way. As Elizabeth mentioned, the way of investing those billions of dollars in modern hospitals might not be the right solution all the time. But then again, I think 3 or 4 hospitals were just announced in the last 4 or 5 months because we have elections in October. They want to get the votes, so that's the political logic, but not the money logic of the whole thing.
So on the announcement.
Yeah, on the announcement.
And Richard has to find the money anyway.
Can I just clarify about the CRDS?
Yeah, there's a Centre de répartition des demandes de services. That's
That's
the
the-
center of
Dispatching.
specialist demand center response, something like that.
Dispatching,
kind
it's
of
a dispatching.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
It's a
that
dispatching
kind of-
center.
For the 9 specialties,
Uh-huh.
it's the instance that dispatch those demand according to the mapping of the services and the specialty. The
Is it
government have to.
public
Yeah, of course.
owned by the government? or
Oh, yes,
some
yes, that's,
hospital like you?
everything is public. Anyway.
Ah, okay.
So that's, you have an organization that and you have a CRDS in every area of the province.
Yeah.
So if you have a clinics of family physicians in that area, if you want to ask it for a specialist, they have to send your demand to that CRDS.
Whether they are FMG or kind of some.
Doesn't
private,
matter.
yeah, that
Doesn't matter because on the end point, even as a specialist,
Uh-huh.
I will have to ask the CRDS to send that patient to another specialist.
They should, or it's kind of some kind
Now,
of facility.
they're forced to.
Forced
Because
to.
at the end point here,
It's
let's suppose we
mandatory.
receive a demand for gastroenterology. But that patient came from this area, but the physician sent the demand directly to the hospital. We will send him back his demand and we'll tell him, send that to the CRDS. But even so, it's not that rigid because that family physician can ask, I want this patient to be seen in that area
Yeah.
with this physician.
Uh-huh.
So if that physician is available, then he'll get the appointment. But most of the time, this is not pointed. This is not
really?
really personal. So they just have the general demand. But sometimes they have a special relationship, or they know that this is a real specialist with what I need. So they can get that even from one area to the area. So let's suppose I'm in the area, I ask my demand to CRDS, but the specialist belongs to another CRDS, but that CRDS will send the demand to the second CRDS, which will send to that doctor. And this was very difficult to plan to start.
It's pretty new.
It was was supposed to be in a few months, but we're dealing with that for 2 years ago now.
Primary physician can kind of some prepare someone through the CRDS, even they are through the CRDS, they can kind of some I report to that specialist.
Yes, they
Can
can do
it be,
that. They can do that. If
But
he's
it's
available and he has
not-
a appointment,
Yes.
enough space in there, they'll get him. But otherwise, they'll have to send it, well, he's not available, you wanna change physician, because we'll go back to the physician.
Even in the situation, the patient can go directly to the CR.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, but then if he's not hospitalized, that's another subtlety. If he's not hospitalized, he doesn't belong to us after that. So if anything happens to him, then he'll say, well, you have to go to this
Go back to
hospital.
the,
But if we do hospitalize him for any reason, then anytime after that, he can be asked to be hospitalized in this hospital.
The appartenance.
That's what we call the appartenance. He belongs to the hospital. Like a patient, let's suppose a patient is followed for, I don't know, heart disease, but he gets pneumonia. He doesn't belong to us. He belongs to us only for heart disease, but for pneumonia, he belongs to the hospital in this area, in this only area.
It's another reason. Another
It's I'm sorry, it's the CRDS is the program of the Montreal and its neighborhood, or that is the
Nationwide.
province-wide program?
It's the whole province. It's indicated by the government, the Quebec Ministry, that has implemented in each region. But as Dr. Kosniak said, we have one CRDS per region. And we can talk to each other.
Could you mention why it was implemented? I don't recall, maybe I was outside, why they decided to implement
Improve the access
to
especially,
improve the access to
the
specialists.
yeah.
Yeah, they want to do that, and especially in this area here in Montreal, we receive a lot of consultation for people outside of Montreal, and whereas we have difficulty answering the needs of the Montreal-based population. So we said, well, okay, let's spread that out, and it's working. It's working very well for the 9 specialties.
Yesterday in Quebec City, they talked about the centralized referral system, so this must be that, it's
Yeah, I
one
think that-
platform, yeah? One system.
That was
So-
explained to you, yeah.
Okay.
That's how we live it, anyway.
I'm by the way from New York City, I'm not from Korea, I was there US Coast, so we have a lot of issues, we have many issues to begin with, but referral turnaround time is one of the issues. So I'm wondering, so when the referral request is made to the system, how fast, like, how long did it take
It
for
depends on
the
the case.
patient to get the?
It depends on the case. This was all discussed and negotiated with all the specialties with the government. We have a syndicate of doctors, which is called the FMSQ. So all the doctors, all the specialists in the province are a member of that syndicate, which is called the FMSQ. And so this was negotiated with the government and the FMSQ, and they all decided that how they wanted to work with that. And each specialty had to come up with a list of people that needed to be seen, and according to the disease, how much time they had to answer that question. So it was spread out in 3 days, 10 days, 30 days, 3 months, and a year for all the specialties. Now they're negotiating that because they have to work the baseline, but now they're working all over again. So if, forget the 3 days, because 3 days is emergency ward. It's emergency almost. So let's suppose we decide that if you have this disease, then you should be seen by a specialist in 10 days. But then the CRDS had to find a place for that patient within 10 days. If it was a month, then it had to find a place within a month.
So what happens if it doesn't happen?
Well, it always happens.
It
They
happens.
always find something.
The consultation
It
doesn't
works,
mean
it
the
works.
patient is treated,
How-
like he needs
how
like
many-
oncology treatment or.
How long have you been operating this CRDS? So more than 1 year or?
Well, it started, I think I started in 2017,
Yeah.
in the fall of 2017. And the spring of 2018, it was to follow up, yeah. It was supposed to be coming up with the next specialties. And then the end of the specialty would be September, but then there was a delay because they were experimenting. It was the first time they were coming out with that. I went to a meeting recently where all the people involved in that process came up with all the answers to the government. Well, that doesn't work, well, that doesn't work, well, that doesn't work. So they have to work it out a bit. And especially that other specialties are coming on.
How many doctors syndicate in Quebec? It's only
They're all syndicated because you have the Fédération des médecins spécialistes for the specialists and the Fédération for the médecins omnipraticiens, general practitioners. And all the doctors are members of one of the others. They don't have the choice.
two syndicates.
Yeah.
Two syndicates.
Et de résidence.
Well, residents are something else.
Then also, just for information clarification, so any family medicine group are not predetermined to refer to only one hospital. It's open, and it is fully by CLS now.
No, they have, if it's an elective case, they have to go through the CRDS. If it's an emergent case, well, you have to go to the hospital right away. They can send them, usually if it's outside of Montreal, they can send them they're supposed to send them to the designated hospital. The problem in Montreal, that was supposed to be the case as well. So from that street to the other street, it's supposed to be this hospital. From this street to the other street, this hospital. But then we were out of that service. We were not supposed to be population obligated. And then what we heard that is the general directors of the other hospitals says something wrong there. You're fooling us. And the government just changed its way around. It says, okay, the geographic distribution is working except in Montreal. So it doesn't work in Montreal. So that's why any patient can come into the CHUM or any other hospitals. But as we mentioned, it's not that bad because the proximity of where you live is important
Yeah, you already.
because of the family, because of the visit, because of the sustaining of the patients. So it's okay. One of the problem we have with the new hospital, if we have the time, you'll see part
Yeah,
of it.
I was gonna ask you, only if the question
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really
are
interesting.
directed to.
But you'll see the rooms in there.
there.
They're very sophisticated, and once a patient is in there, it doesn't want to leave.
Yeah.
Is in a five-star hotel.
Look at the line, let's.
Yeah, this is where we are going now.
Okay, so we'll have now because we have to stay. We have to.
We're gonna be just a bit shorter, if you have time. Anyway, if you still have more questions afterwards, you can email them.
Well, when we walk around, you can ask.
Yeah, and we can answer them, but afterwards, if you still have questions, you can email them to me, and then I'll make sure that I have.
And we'll send them the
I'll send it to
presentation.
the appropriate persons.
And you will send them the presentation as well, so you can
Yeah,
have
please.
more information.
Especially for the indicator, I think they.
C'est pas une présentation qui est faite pour envoyer, pour expliquer, que vous allez la voir. Okay, so thank you very much.
Merci, Deschamps.
Veux-tu nous accompagner aussi?